Welcome to the podcast, Let the Prophet Speak. Today we continue our study of Shmuel Aleph, the first book of Samuel. We are in the middle of chapter 25. We left off where Avigail, the wife of Naval, was approaching David and his men with food and gifts, a feast full of food to give them in repayment for the protection that they provided for her husband's flock of sheep and goats over the year during this festive time of shearing. David was on his way with 400 men, all armed and ready for battle to take vengeance against Naval for refusing to give them their due. Naval does not know that she's on her way. She has not told him, but she wants to do what's right and what's just, and also to save her whole family and household from destruction at the hands of David. So she's doing this without reporting it to her husband. We are up to verse 21. So now, David Omar, and David was saying, and when there is no subject to whom he is speaking, generally this means he was saying to himself. This is what David was thinking. David was thinking, Achla sheker shamarti, for nothing I have guarded Eskol asher lo zeh bamidbar, all of this man's belongings in the wilderness. All of this whole year I've been helping guard his things, and I've been doing it for nothing. V'lo nifkad mikol shalom uma. We've done such a good and faithful job that not a single possession of his was taken or hurt. V'yashav li roa tachas tova, and he repaid me with evil in face of me acting nicely and well with him. I did good by him, and he did not. He returned me, treating me this way. This is what God should do to David's enemies, and so God should add even more. In other words, the punishment from me, the vengeance from me, David, and God could even do more. If I leave from any of his things that he possesses till the morning, a single person, this is a very derogatory way of referring to men, anyone who urinates against the wall, any man. In other words, David held not just Naval culpable, but all of the men among his group who presumably by association supported Naval in his stingy and arrogant approach, and didn't stand up for David's rights and the rights of David's men. Vatera Avigail et David. And when Abigail, as she's coming from the camp with all this food, she saw David coming, Vatimaher, and she hurried. Presumably, she knows she needs to rush. This is the second time the verse tells how she hurried, because she quickly needs to do her plan before David meets Naval, and it's all over anyway, and her plan will never have a chance to happen. So Vatered me'al hachamar, and she got down from the donkey. Vatipol apei David al ponea, and she fell before David on her face, treating him as if he was a king already. Vatishtachu oretz, and she bowed to the land, to the ground. Vatipol al raglav, and she fell before his feet. Vatomer, and she said, Bi ani adoni ha'avon. Please, my master, the sin is mine. I am responsible. Even though clearly she was not responsible, but in her humility, she took responsibility to herself to fix this issue. Utidaberna amascha biaznachan, please allow your maidservant to speak in your ear. Ushma es divrei amasacha. Before you do anything rash, listen to what your maidservant, in other words, I have to say. Al no yosim adoni et libo. Apparently, she didn't wait for David to say okay. She just continued talking. Don't take to heart that which El Ish Hablial Hazeh over the matter of this nasty guy Al Naval regarding Naval. Ki chishmo kenhu, just as his name is he's disgusting, so is he. Naval Shemo, his name is Naval. Unavala imo, and disgusting, grotesque behavior. That is what follows him. That is what's with him. That's how he lives. Vani amoscha, and I am your maidservant. Lo reisi et narei adoni asher shalachta. I wasn't there at the time when your men came, and the men that you sent to speak to Naval. I wasn't there, so didn't have the opportunity to respond kindly and to respond appropriately. Naval was the one that was there, and he was the one who responded in such a nasty, selfish way. V'ato Adoni, and now my master, Chai Adonai, by the life as God lives, v'chei nafshecha, and as you live, asher menoacha Adonai mi bo b'damim, the God who has held you back from coming with blood, literally meaning God has kept you and God has helped you not respond with violence. It's unclear. It seems almost like she's referencing the previous opportunities that David had to commit violence. She's appealing to David's merciful side and saying, don't respond with violence here either. Remember, in the previous chapter especially, and in other occasions, David had the opportunity to respond with violence, and he chose not to. Here she's asking him, please don't do that again, because by hurting Naval and the whole family, you're hurting me, and you're hurting innocent people. V'hoshea yod chalach, and and God has saved your hand for you. In other words, God has kept you from acting in a rash way and acting in a violent way, and He has saved your hand for you. He has kept you able to defend yourself while at the same time stopping you from committing violence. And now, yihu chenaval oivecha, let your enemies be like Naval, like that, let them all fall in the same fate that Naval will fall into. And all those that are looking to harm my master, to harm you, David, should all share the same fate as Naval will share. In other words, when you allow God to take vengeance for you and you don't bloody your hands, so to speak, on your own, and may all of your enemies fall the same fate. Viata, and now, habiracha hazos, this blessing, in other words, this wonderful food and everything, that offering that I am giving you, asher hevi shivchascha la'adoni, that your maidservant, the language, she shows two different languages, amoscha, which is also translated as maidservant, but it's slightly a higher level of. An amma is typically a Jewish young girl that gets hired out to another family due to poverty. A shivcha is typically a slave girl. So now she's calling herself an even more humble phrase, shivchascha la'adoni, that which your maidservant has brought to my master, v'nitnala na'arim, give it to all of the young men, hamisalchim b'raglei adoni, that are going and following my master. So no, please forgive lefesha hamosacha, to the sin of your maidservant. Again, she's saying this, asking for forgiveness, even though she's not the one who's ever sinned. Ki aso ya'aseh Adonai la'adoni bayis neman, because God will give my master a bayit neman, which means a solid house, a house which will literally means trustworthy in the sense that it will last forever, a long-lasting and enduring home. Ki milchamot Adonai Adoni nilcham, because you, my master, the wars that you wage are the wars of God. They're not selfish personal wars, but you are the leader of the people, and the wars that you will wage are the wars of God Himself. And there shall be no evil found in you for your days. Here she's appealing again to David, saying, don't take this vengeance. Don't act in such a way, because if you do, it will turn out that you will very probably be guilty of taking innocent life of people that did not deserve that punishment. Even if Naval maybe did, the others do not. So make sure, in order to fight the war of God, you have to be unselfish and make sure that you do not have any evil, do not have any bad within you. This is a really, really deep and important verse here, because we know as time goes on, there will be faults, there will be flaws in David's character. But at this point, so far, everything that David has done has been perfect, so to speak. And she's begging him to do as much as he can to keep it that way. Vayakam Adam lirdafcha, and a person who may get up and chase you, ulevakeshes nafshacha, and to search, to try to kill you. V'hoisa nefesh adoni tzirura b'tzror hachayim, may the soul of my master be bound in the bound of life, with the and the tzor is a bundle of life. May you always be tied to life. In other words, stay and remain virtuous, so that your soul will always be attached to life and not death and killing. Es Adonai Elohecha, with the life that continues with God, the Lord your God. Ve'ed nefesh oyevecha, and the soul of your enemies, yikal ena, may they be flung besoch kafakela, in the from the kaf, which is the pocket of the kela, of the slingshot, something, the sling. Clearly, she's probably referencing this slingshot because this is a weapon that David was very familiar with, as of course you recall the story of David and Goliath. And she's saying that the kafakela is the pocket of destruction within which the souls of those that are your enemies will stay there. But if you, again, she's saying pretty clearly that if you decide to take the route of vengeance and killing, then you may not merit to be in this B'tzor HaChaim. You will descend to the same depths as your enemies. And it shall be that when God has done for my master everything that he has spoken good about you. In other words, she clearly knew, and this was well known to the people by now, that David was destined to be the king, because Samuel had anointed him so. And he appoints that you should become the leader of the people of Israel. Do not let this episode be something which makes you trip, which makes you stumble. And another word for stumbling, leiv ladoni, a stumbling block for your heart. In other words, something that will cause you to lose your ability to have that moral michshol leiv. In other words, you need to have that moral standing to say that you are better. The moral standing to get up and say that I don't have evil, that I'm not vengeful, I don't kill innocent people, as opposed to Saul, who we just learned several chapters ago, has that terrible stain of mass murder to his record. David, you need to stand up and not have that stain on your record, and to go ahead and spill innocent blood for nothing. You cannot have that on your record. And may he meaning my master, be saved by God. And may God do good for my master. And then and when God does good, you will remember your maidservant. You will remember me, because you'll remember that I set this right. So here she's trying to save her entire family, and she's appealing to David. And we mentioned how intelligent she was, and her intelligence comes out so clear in this speech here. It's explaining to David what makes him different than Saul. Why is it that he deserves the kingdom, whereas Saul does not? Because he does not act vengefully. He does not kill innocent people. He does not act that way. Vayomer David la Avigail. David responded and spoke and said to Avigail, Baruch Adonai Eloi Yisrael, may God, the Lord of Israel, be blessed, Asher Shalachech Hayom Hazel Likrasi, that he has sent you today to greet me. I was acting in anger. I got upset. I got angry, and I was about to do something violent. God sent you to me to teach me otherwise. Uvaruch ta'amech, and blessed be your reasoning, your explanations, your speech was wonderful. Uvruchaat, and you yourself are a blessed woman. Asher kilisini, because you have stopped me. Hayom hazem mibo badamim, you have stopped me today from murdering. V'hoshea yadili, and you saved my own hand for me. In other words, you saved me and allowed me to maintain the upper moral hand. V'ulam chai Adonai Elei Yisrael, and as long as God, the Lord of Israel, lives, Asher mena'ani mehara osach, that he has kept me from harming you. Kilulei miharta, right? So praised be God who has kept me from harming you. Kilulei miharta, because had you not been in a hurry, vatavos likrasi, and had you not come quickly to meet me and greet me, kim no sarlin of all at our boker mashtim makir, there wouldn't have been left by tomorrow morning a single male person in the entire household of Naval. Vayikach David miyado et asher hivia lo. And David then accepted the gift that she brought to him. V'lo amar, and he said to her, Ali l'shalom leveseich, go home in peace. Re'i shamati v'kolech ve'asa panayach. See, I have listened to your voice, I have listened to your advice, ve'asa panayach, and I have respected that which you have advised. This is really important here because taking advice from a woman is no small matter of humility in those days. The future king listening to a woman and saying, "You're right, and I respect you, and I honor you." This is something which, in those days, could have been seen would have been seen by many other men as a sign of weakness, but to David listened to someone who was earnest and honest in what she said. When he heard good advice, he took it, regardless from its source. And he recognized her intelligence. He recognized how much she meant what she said, and that she was right. When presented with the truth, David took it. Vatovo Avigail el Naval, and Avigail came back to Naval. V'hinelo mishtebeveso kimishtei hamelach. And at a time he was having a party, like a party of a king. In other words, he was celebrating the shearing. V'lev Naval tovalav, and Naval was in a good mood, and he was happy. V'hu shikar ad me'od, and he was extremely drunk. So v'lo higidalo, she did not tell him davar katon v'gadol, not anything small or big out of broker until the morning came. So she didn't have to tell him. He was partying, he was drunk, no reason to say anything about what happened. He was involved in having a good time. Vayibaboker, the morning came, b'tzeitz hayayin min Naval, when the influence of the wine left Naval. Vatagid lo ishto es hadvarim ha'ela, and his wife told him all of the things that happened. Basically, Vayamas libo b'kirbo, and his heart died within him. He recognized what this exactly means. He just felt awful. His heart died within him. This led to maybe a heart attack, and he was stiff as a stone. So maybe it means that he got a heart attack and he just was bedridden. Approximately 10 days passed. He eventually died, possibly of heart failure. David heard that Naval had died. And he said, Baruch Adonai, blessed is God, Asher Rav et Riv Cherpasi. He fought the fight of my shame. God fought for me. I did not have to be guilty of murder. God took care of justice for me. Miyad Naval, he took justice from Naval. And he held back his servant, in other words me, he held me back from perpetrating evil. Naval, and the evil of Naval, Heshiv Adonai Birosho, God, literally it means returned on his head, meaning God took care of him, took the appropriate justice. Vayishlach David vayedaber ba'Avigail, and David sent and he spoke to speak to Avigail, to suggest that she become his wife. Seems like a very appropriate wife for a future king, a woman of such intelligence, of such kindness, a woman of cunning, a woman of courage, and a woman of physical beauty that we mentioned before. He sent her, now she was a widow, to take her for a wife. The servants of David came to Abigail to Carmel, and they spoke to her the following message: David shalachanu elayach, David sent us to you, l'kachtech lo leisha, to take you to him as a wife. Batakam, and she stood up, vatishtachu apayamarta, and she bowed down to the ground. Vatomer hinei amaschal shivcha, behold, your maidservant is here as a maidservant, right? Literally, amascha is a higher level, like I said, of a maidservant, and a shiv is like a shivcha, a lower level. In other words, I'm ready to submit myself to come l'chotz raglei avdei Adoni, to wash the feet of my master. In other words, I am ready to do anything for David. I'm in. Vatzimaher vatokom Avigail, and she rushed again. She hurried and she got up. Vatirkav al chamar, and she rode on a donkey. V'chamish naroseh, on 5 of her young women that were her attendees. Hahochot l'ragla, those that go with her, that go before her, to help her. Vatelach achrei malachei David vatilo Elisha, and she followed the messengers of David, and she became his wife. V'et Achinoam lokach David mi Israel, and David also took another wife from Jezreel, right, from Israel. He took Achinoam vatiena gam shtein lo lenashim. At this point now he has these two wives. Michal, apparently, that was his wife before, Shaul's daughter. That our minds immediately go, wait a minute, you just said that both of them, but what about the third wife, the wife that we already knew about, Michal, the one who had saved David when he was escaping Saul, but also, despite saving him, also wasn't so loyal when she spoke to her father, and she said to her father, that David threatened to kill her. So her loyalty was somewhat questionable. But she apparently did not go out to the wilderness with David and remained back in the palace with her father. So Shaul nasan et Michal bito, Shaul took this opportunity, on the heels of David taking these two wives, took his daughter and gave her Michal bito Eshes David, the wife of David. He gave her Lefalti ben Laish asher migalim, gave her as a wife to Palti ben Laish, who was from a place called Galim. Now, how exactly Saul took a woman who is still married, as far as we know, and it says clearly in the verse, Eshet David, she's still technically the wife of David, but Saul gave her away. Obviously, this was meant to be a smack in the face to David, which, given Saul's behavior until now, shouldn't surprise us at all. So this concludes chapter 25. Thank you so much for studying chapter 25 together. Chapter 26 will continue the saga of David as a fugitive, and Saul chasing him down. Looking forward to studying chapter 26 and, of course, the rest of this book of Samuel together.